You've probably seen someone chugging a shaker bottle the second they rack their last set, like missing some invisible deadline might undo the whole workout. Where did that ritual even come from? And while we're at it, is any of this actually safe, or are you slowly wrecking your kidneys one scoop at a time? Let's actually go through this properly, the history, how it's used today, and what the evidence really says about your health. Protein supplementation didn't start in a gym. It started in a dairy factory. In the late 1800s, food scientists figured out how to separate whey and casein from milk and turn them into powders. Not for athletes, for the dairy industry, looking for new ways to use a byproduct. By the 1930s, a British physician was using early protein formulations to help malnourished hospital patients who couldn't get enough protein from regular food. The idea was simple: concentrate the nutrition into something a weakened patient could actually manage to eat. Around the same time, a very different kind of pioneer entered the picture. Eugen Sandow, often called the father of modern bodybuilding, was already selling a powdered milk product called Plasmon decades earlier, with vague claims about its tissue-building properties. Then came the protein wars. In the 1940s and 50s, two men, Bob Hoffman and Joe Weider, turned protein powder into a marketing battleground. Both ran their own bodybuilding magazines. Both sold competing protein products. And both leaned heavily on fake scientific credibility. Weider's Weider Research Clinic, referenced in his ads, was reportedly just a door leading to a broom closet. Here's a detail that sounds almost too strange to be true. In the 1950s, a physician named John Ziegler developed one of the first synthetic protein powders to help his weightlifting team meet their protein targets. A year later, that same doctor created Dianabol, the first synthetic anabolic steroid. The protein and the performance-enhancing drug entered the fitness world side by side, from the same person, within 12 months of each other. Through the 60s and 70s, bodybuilding exploded into mainstream culture. Schwarzenegger, Gold's Gym, Venice Beach. But there was a real technical problem holding protein powder back. Pre-1970, whey powder was gritty, brown, and genuinely unpleasant to drink. In 1970, a manufacturing breakthrough called membrane filtration solved that. It let manufacturers strip out the unwanted compounds and produce a cleaner, better-tasting whey protein, and that's the innovation that turned protein powder from a niche bodybuilder's grim ritual into the mainstream product we recognize today. Fast forward to today, and the ritual looks very different, but it's still wrapped in a kind of urgency that traces directly back to that history. You've probably heard of the anabolic window, the idea that you have to get protein into your body within 30 minutes after training, or you lose out on the gains. Here's where that idea actually came from. Early research in the 1990s and 2000s found that muscles do respond well to protein shortly after exercise. That part's true, but over time, marketing, much of it from supplement companies, sharpened that observation into a hard 30-minute deadline. The science never actually said that. One randomized trial gave resistance-trained men protein either immediately before or immediately after their workout, and found no meaningful difference in strength or muscle growth between the two groups. A broader review concluded that if an anabolic window exists at all, it's not 30 minutes. It's more like several hours wide, sometimes 5 or 6. What actually matters far more than precise timing is your total protein intake across the entire day. There is one real exception worth knowing. If you train in a fasted state, no food beforehand, getting some protein in afterward becomes more genuinely useful simply because your body hasn't had any recent amino acids to work with. But if you've eaten a reasonable meal an hour or two before training, that frantic post-workout shake isn't doing the job people think it's doing. So now the part everyone actually came here for. Is any of this harming you? This is the single most repeated health fear about protein supplements, and in healthy people, it's not well supported by the evidence. A systematic review of 26 studies in healthy adults found that higher protein intake, even well above the standard recommended amount, had little to no negative effect on markers of kidney function. Several studies actually found higher filtration rates with more protein, and all of them remained within a normal, healthy range. That's the key qualifier. Healthy kidneys. The 2024 clinical guidelines from KDIGO, the leading global authority on kidney disease, specifically recommend that people who already have chronic kidney disease and are at risk of progression should avoid high protein intake. So this isn't a blanket protein is always fine. Its protein is fine for people whose kidneys are already working normally. If you have existing kidney disease, this genuinely doesn't apply to you, and that's worth taking seriously. Here's where the real, under-discussed story is, and it's not really about the protein at all. In a widely covered 2024-2025 investigation, a consumer watchdog group called the Clean Label Project tested 160 of the best-selling protein powders in the U.S. and found that 47% exceeded California's Proposition 65 safety thresholds for heavy metals like lead, arsenic, and cadmium. Plant-based and chocolate-flavored powders tended to test significantly higher than whey-based vanilla products. That sounds alarming. And it's worth taking seriously. But it's also worth hearing the other side fairly. California's Prop 65 threshold is deliberately set about 1,000 times below the level where any harm has actually been observed. It's a must-disclose this is present trigger, not a this will hurt you line. For comparison, half a cup of ordinary cooked spinach contains enough naturally occurring lead to trigger the same warning label if vegetables were required to carry one. So the honest takeaway sits between the two extremes. Heavy metals are genuinely present in many protein powders, often well below levels with established harm. But the variation between brands is real. Plant-based and chocolate products do test consistently higher, and there's currently no federal requirement forcing manufacturers to test for this at all. What this actually means for you. If you're going to use protein supplements regularly, the genuinely useful thing to check isn't the marketing on the front of the tub. It's whether the product has third-party testing, ideally through a program like NSF Certified for Sport or Informed Sport, which independently verifies what's actually inside. Whey-based, vanilla-flavored products have consistently tested lower for contaminants than plant-based or chocolate-flavored ones. Not a reason to avoid those products outright, but a reasonable factor if minimizing exposure matters to you. So where does that leave us? Protein supplementation started in a dairy factory, and a hospital ward got hijacked by a marketing war between two men with fake research clinics, and somehow ended up tangled together with the literal invention of anabolic steroids. The 30-minute panic at the end of your workout is mostly inherited marketing, not biology. Your total daily intake matters far more than your timing. And for the actual health question, in people with healthy kidneys, the protein itself is not the thing to worry about. What's genuinely worth your attention is what else might be in the tub, and whether the company that made it is willing to prove that with independent testing. Subscribe for more food and health claims, fact-checked simply. See you in the next video.